great deal.
You hear that, Mr. Anderson? That is the sound of inevitability. It is the sound of your death. Goodbye, Mr. Anderson.
My name is Neo!
And welcome to the Hungover Podcast. That's first take, people.
Yes, you heard it right. We're going to be talking about The Matrix and giving it a review because, well, one, we really fucking love this movie. And it might be one of the most seminal movies of our time growing up in the 90s. Late 90s. Beat for beat, the most quotable movie of all time, I would have to say. And also, we're excited looking forward into this series. This is going to be part of a 3-part podcast series where we review the Matrix trilogy and hopefully...
I think it's going to be longer, actually.
Oh, yeah,
I think
the
it might
animatrix.
be 4 parts because we're going to do the animatrix and the extended universe.
Yeah, and then we also... Including,
we're going to do a drunk play in Enter the Matrix, which is, I'm pretty sure, where you were going.
Yes, of course. One of our probably most favorite guilty pleasure games is Enter the Matrix. It's a really horrible, horrible game where you play as Ghost, one of the characters.
At the time, though.
One of the characters from Matrix Reloaded.
Or Niobe.
Or Niobe, that's true. You can play either, which is kind of cool. Yeah, super excited to get started with this podcast, Yvonne. Of course, we highly suggest you go see The Matrix before you listen to this because it will be full spoiler cast. But, of course, the movie came out in 1999, I believe. So you had
Nailed it.
Of course, I mean, they mentioned the year that it is in the movie. But that's the only reason I know. I never actually looked it up, but I just assumed. But yeah, so go ahead, watch The Matrix, the first one. It's a great movie. You could probably skip everything else if you really wanted to and didn't have enough time, but we're going to go into those 2 next week and the week after and the week after that.
You can watch them along with us. I think they're all on Netflix right now, so if you have that subscription, that's great. If not, like Julien, and you can watch them in Ultra HD, lossless, go for that, because the blacks in my version were not crisp.
They are throttling your internet, people. Get Blu-rays or 4K Blu-rays. Now, Yvonne...
The blacks in the Netflix version were very much akin to the Game of Thrones all-black episode.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, their service is being throttled right now. But yeah, we figured we'd review a fun trilogy for us and a series of universe-type things in this Matrix universe. Because there's a lot of quarantine going on, so I hope you guys have some entertainment.
And the Matrix 4 got delayed by this quarantine, I think.
Of course. Well, I mean, I don't know when were they just like writing it. I feel like. Anyways,
no, I think they were shooting.
Oh, really?
We'll get into that.
We'll get into that probably at the end of our series here and what we have hopes for The Matrix 4. But Yvonne, we start our podcast out every single week by asking each other, what media have you been consuming? And what did you drink last night? Yvonne?
So, I did a full rewatch on the entire Archer series, which is one of my favorite series of all time.
That's awesome.
I bought them all on Amazon when they were kind of on sale, I think. So it was like $12 or $13 a season. I don't know if that's on sale or not, but it was well worth the money for me because I've watched this series. This is like the series that I go back to very often. I think it's fucking hilarious.
It's good comfort food. It's a great show to just put on. It's hilarious.
And because it's one of those things which I put on usually in the background while I'm doing other things, there's always parts of episodes that I'd never paid attention to before. So it was great. I'm really excited for the new season of Archer to come back when it does.
Very nice.
I think it's just for me, it's an incredibly witty show, but for others, I know it's just very vulgar and whatever. So
no, that's stupid. Who thinks it's vulgar? No,
Laura can't stand it.
Really?
I know it's very vulgar, but Laura,
that's probably one of the best parts about it. I think. I don't know.
I think so too. But to each their own.
Can't handle the comedy. Ugh.
I'm also. What games did I play this week? We played a bunch of Warzone. Played a little bit of Overwatch. I started Borderlands 3.
Nice.
Because it was on sale for half price, and
it's a good price for that game. I think.
Happily report that it is exactly like Borderlands 1 and 2. They have slightly different. Every time you get a gun, it's RNG'd, so it's kind of cool. They totally broke the Malawan guns, though. I don't know if this was in Borderlands 2, but you have to charge the Malawan guns.
Mm-hmm.
So Malawan, in the Borderlands series, there's a bunch of different companies. That's like 4 major companies that sell weapons. And the Malawan ones were always ones that were focused on elemental energy and things like that. And in Borderlands 3, you literally have to charge them to fire them. So they're completely useless IMO.
I see.
But I'm playing a run and gun, up close siren character. But every character in that game is basically just run and gun. So, you know.
Well, that's cool.
It's
fun to play, I'm sure.
What's striking me, like the gameplay is actually fun. You know, you run around, you shoot guns, you pick up more guns, you switch out your loadout all the time.
Aren't there cool abilities in this one or something?
I haven't
saw some gameplay.
Unlocked a lot of cool abilities. My character's Siren just is able to fire out an astral projection of herself that goes forward. There's another one that does like a ground pound around her. So I'm switching up the abilities as I see some interest, but really for me it's mostly like aiming and different things. Though I suppose to improve the fun of the game, I should probably try out the abilities more. But for me, this game has always been about just picking up different guns and shooting. So
it's the original looter shooter, I think. Probably.
It's if not the original, it is the prototype that everything should be measured against from now on. It's okay. What I don't understand so far is like the entire story is based around a character from the first game. So Firehawk, who is Lilith, who was the siren character in the first game in Borderlands 1.
Okay.
Came back as Firehawk in Borderlands 2. Is back again as the Crimson Raider Firehawk in Borderlands 3. But it's like you create this character, but in the cutscenes, no characters interact with your character. So it's like, why am I here? Why am I not just playing as Lilith?
That's so dumb. That's weird.
Like if you're building the entire the first part before you leave Pandora to go to Promethea, a different planet, which I don't know if that's the first time you get to leave Pandora or not. But you go and
couldn't tell you. No idea. I played.
This is early on in the game. Some spoilers. And Lilith loses her powers, her siren powers, due to the bad guy. And that's like a major turning point. And like there's an entire cutscene where your character is not involved. And this happens all the time.
That's
and then
weird.
You get onto the spaceship and they just run you ragged with a second level of tutorial of understanding where everybody is on the ship. And it's bonkers. It's so annoying. It's like you go up to the bridge for a cutscene that doesn't involve you. Then you have to go back down to the cargo bay, which are like direct opposites. So like you go up to the bridge, watch a cutscene in which the main villain interacts not with you but with Lilith, and then go back down to the cargo bay to get a pod to transport you to the ground of the planet on Promethea. That's literally crazy. Like a 5 to 8 minute sequence. I literally quit the game because I was just like, I'm not running back to the cargo bay right now. It was too boring. So I give this game so far like a C+. It's like the standard for looter shooters. It's not all that fun, but you know, maybe it's more fun with other people. Like I've been noticing, because I played Warzone solo and then with either you or you and other people, and it's way more fun to play shooters with other people. So I don't know. Maybe I just want that camaraderie, especially in quarantine time, where I spend enough time by myself as is.
Makes sense. Video games are perfect for that. And Borderlands, I think a lot of people do play that game multiplayer, not single player. So I think that's why people are really excited about. We're really excited about Borderlands 3. But that's exciting. Anything else? Did you drink anything? Good.
I've been getting really into martinis lately.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
I think they're an amazing drink. I just got so what's awesome is I've been substituting a meal a day with salad, and I put olives into my salad, so I have olive juice built in to just my daily regimen. So now I can add like the olive juice, which usually like you just throw out because it's the extra scrap or whatever. I'm using every part of the buffalo here.
Not bad, Yvonne.
Throw that into my martini. But I just got like the big green olives stuffed with jalapeno.
Ooh.
So the olive juice is going to have some spice to it. So I was thinking maybe trying to make some sort of tequila drink focused on that spice and something else.
Lime.
Yeah.
Tequila and this jalapeno. You're like, but you know it's going to be good.
Yeah, it will be. The other thing is to do, man, I miss Texas so much. In Texas, they have this, like, everywhere you can get it. It's honey that's got jalapenos preserved in it.
Oh, nice.
So the honey is really spicy, and I think that would have made an excellent drink, but I don't have any here. So I'm going to play around with it, and I'll get back to you. I'll report later.
All right. That sounds good.
Julian, what have you been up to?
As for me, today, which is the 30th of April, I beat Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I also beat Animal Crossing. So when you beat Animal Crossing, basically your goal of the game is to make your town really nice, and then KK Slider, which is a mainstay in the series, he's like the little white dog that plays the guitar. He comes and plays a concert at your town, and then they roll the credits for you. And then after that, you get the ability to terraform your town, which is actually really cool. So you can literally you can erase rivers in your town. You can create new rivers. You can knock down the cliffs. You can make new cliffs. So that's kind of cool. You can make paths and shit. So you can really customize your town, and I think that's the first time they've ever really, or it's your island, sorry, but the first time you've ever really been able to do that.
So like it's
Animal
basically
Crossing.
You beat the game, so your reward is you get 100% control over it. Does it cost money still to terraform everything?
Not to terraform. It costs Nook Miles, so that's the other currency in the game. You get Nook Miles by like catching bugs, catching fish, being nice to your neighbors, traveling, these types of things, and making your town look nice. You just get Nook Miles for basically a lot of the things you might end up... Sorry, there's a motorcycle outside. You might end up... What the hell are you doing? Stay inside. Dude, there was a... I have to tell you, there was a birthday party up my fucking block the other day. And
did you call the police? Like
I
De
called the
Blasio
police.
said?
No, I'm not an asshole. But like, I'm glad you're having fun. But come on, people, we have to social distance. Seriously,
especially in New York City.
Real serious thing. Seriously, do not do that shit. Okay, it's great. I'm glad you're all happy, celebrating things and drinking, whatever. But you can't do this. Not now. But anyways, yeah, you get the ability to unlock more and more terraforming options if you complete more tasks and shit. But it doesn't cost money. What costs money is to move like a building or something, or to build a bridge or incline or something. I don't know. The that game's fun, but it's kind of it's like a mundane game that you can't really... I don't know. I don't really care about talking about it. It's just fun for me to play.
It's fun for a lot of people in quarantine. Yeah. It's just like The Sims. It's exactly, like a Nintendo Sims, which I immediately quit playing.
Exactly. But Final Fantasy VII Remake was super cool. I definitely had a lot of fun playing it through, and I might go back and play hard mode a little later, in order to try to get the platinum trophy in the game, but I do still have to beat Persona 5 Royale. I was actually trying to almost rushing through Final Fantasy 7 so I could get back to Persona 5 because I do really want to beat that game. But this game is actually really great. I think they did a really great job modernizing the game. I know I already said this, but making it accessible to gamers in 2020, I think is a really cool thing they did. It's a retelling of the story, but they've changed a lot of the story. So Sephiroth doesn't really come into the game, at least not this early into the original Final Fantasy VII, and he's basically in this game almost every hour, which I didn't really like. And
don't they have the flashback? Sephiroth in the beginning?
No, I don't think so. While you're in Midgar, I don't think you ever see Sephiroth. Maybe there's one flashback.
I thought there was at least one. But...
I think I know what flashback you're talking about, and it's the one where they're on the bridge.
Being as I am the expert in
yes.
Final Fantasy,
they have that flashback in this game, and it's cool. But I don't think Sephiroth needed. He definitely did not even need to be in this game. But I think they wanted to make it have a climax and conclusion, because it's the first part of a story that's going to continue on. So they needed to have a main protagonist, but they already had that, which is President Shinra. But I don't know, whatever. I don't want to spoil anything. I guess I just spoiled. You fight Sephiroth. Okay. I mean, he's in the game. You fight him at the end of the game. You fight him at the end of this game.
It's super really old game.
Yeah,
that's been remade. But it's not. The boss isn't going to be different.
The problem, I don't know if I should say anything. If people are still playing it, I'm sorry I spoiled it. But it's an awesome fight. You have fun. The combat is super cool in the game. The ending is super cool. It's just I don't necessarily know if it's necessary in this part of the game. But it's super over the top, super anime, as you would expect from a Japanese RPG that has already super anime looking characters. And they sort of move on. And the cool part about the game, you unlock a hard mode. You get to keep all your items, your materia. And you get to keep your level and all your and you can play the game again in hard mode. The hard mode is actually very difficult. You can't use any items, and you don't recover any MP when you go to a rest point, which is very difficult. So the conservation comes in using your spells in combat, which are super useful in the game. So you have to really strategize in order to beat it. Some of the bosses I had a lot of trouble with on normal mode, so I don't know if I can actually beat it, but we'll see. On hard mode, it's a very difficult game, but it's also pretty fun and rewarding. The combat's really great. The characters are cool. I'm super excited for the next game. I think they do it in 3, but conceivably I don't know if they can actually do it in 3 because there's a lot left to the game. But
this is supposedly only the first 8 hours, though, right?
About 8 to 10 hours, I would say.
And the original game is 50 hours?
40. You could be in 40. So conceivably, you could do it all in 3 games. But I don't know. It's up to them. It's sort of like a Hobbit situation, I guess. Right? They took that book and stretched it out to 3 movies. So I don't know what they're gonna do. We'll see. Tetsuya Nomura is talking a big game. He's the director of the game, and he's talking a big game about the next one. He's like, "We're gonna get it out. We're not slowing down. We're going fast." He's Sonic now, so that's that. I also, of course, watched The Matrix Yvonne last night.
Talking about a multi-part series with a satisfying story arc and conclusion in the first part.
Yes. Very satisfying conclusion that could have just left it there, but they decided to push forward. Now, Yvonne, we joke The Matrix is beat for beat the most quotable movie of all time, but I really think it is. You see it all the time. I think it was one of the most influential movies of all time, I would have to say. But you see it all the time in memes, in all these in just our everyday vernacular. What are you saying? I can dodge bullets. In gamer vernacular, anyways. And of course the meme is not like this. That's been quoted, or that was really popular a couple of years ago, I think, but not anymore. But it's a very popular movie, and I think really iconic. And obviously, this is Keanu Reeves' blockbuster role, even though it probably shot him up to the top of popular action stars at the time. But of course, he was in Speed before it. I think that was in '92. But I think this is really a breakout role for Keanu Reeves. But
I think he takes the action star belt. I mean, he did Point Break and Speed before this.
And this was his crescendo, if you will.
Yeah.
Of series of movies, anyways. But of course, this movie came out in 1999, as we said earlier, to the turn of the century. And I think people were really worried about Y2K. I'm not sure if this was actually planned at all. Do you think they intended to, the Wachowski brothers at the time? Of course, another thing to talk about. But that's super cool. Whatever. But the two directors or writers of the movie, of course, they must have been writing this
writers and
screenplay, writers and directors. The screenplay, I don't know if they wrote the screenplay, but they wrote this story. I'm not sure if they intended it to come out at the turn of the century, right before 2000, which, as some of you may remember, was really scary for a lot of people, especially people in the tech industry, because we were unsure if all of our computers would reset because a phenomenon known as Y2K, right?
Everything was going to fall apart because
the dates
relied on the hubris, and the dates would change. And
right. So
the valleys would flood, and power plants would turn off or go haywire, and all of civilization was built up to that point.
And of course, that didn't happen. But I mean, some people were legitimately worried about this. I'm not sure if there's any worry to be had, but I think it was in the public consciousness, our reliance on computers and technology at the time. And so I think this movie really came out to an audience that and of course it's about artificial intelligence taking over and these types of things. We'll get into that, but I think the cultural impact of the movie was really important coming out, and I just wanted to set the landscape here for when this movie came out. And then we can sort of get into our favorite parts, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
That type of thing. So
1999, it's like you said, setting up for Y2K. It's also, we've had the internet for a few years now. The pace of everything is accelerating. And there's kind of the beginning of the generational gap between the growing millennial population, their parents, and then the parents, the greatest generation, the parents of Gen X, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is one of the more interesting interpretations of the eventuality of technology, the speed of which the economy was developing, and just the direction in which the population was going, where the striations of society are increasingly differentiated. So the middle class that had boomed post 40s and accelerated in growth following, some years of conservative practices, was reaching like the beginning stages of the difference that we see now,
Yeah.
Glass-Steagall gets repealed just a few years before this, I think, which is the law that separated like commercial banks and investment banks.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that are combining at this time, in November of 1999, Glass-Steagall is repealed. So this is going to be the beginning of the separation, of the 1% going way above where everybody else is.
Yeah.
And we see this kind of progression into the future of what is acceptable by the humans in the Matrix world of this, like, people still have their meaningless jobs. Mm-hmm. There's still really poor people, homeless people, really rich people. Like, there's a striation in that way. And there's still this kind of neo steampunky feel and vibe with, like, the cool kids being into kind of retro cars and things, and those who are in the outskirts of society having these kind of niche style and different things.
Right. Yeah. Not only did the movie have a really cool sort of lived-in world where, you know, everything was really, it seemed like it had its own purpose inside the movie, right? There's not like just some random stuff going on. All the props really felt like, or the stages and the scenes looked like it fit the general idea of the movie, right? Everything sort of made sense in the movie, and I think this movie sort of influenced a lot of. I mean, I don't really remember. I was 99, so I was 8 at the time. When this movie came out, but I think I'm pretty sure it influenced a lot of people in the age range of 18 to 35, right? People who are influenced by movies and have money, right? That's that general age range, to go out and sort of like dress like the people in the Matrix, right? I think it sort of started a fashion sense of
those big combat boots, leather,
big combat boots, leather, sunglasses, slick back hair, that type of stuff. Really sort of almost, I guess it started, it's not exactly steampunk, but it's close to it. It's sort of like a sci-fi, well, steampunk is sci-fi, but like a more futuristic look, I guess, in a way.
It's like a combination of, like, you throw back to some 40s stylings, some 60s stylings, update it with some of the modern sensibility, and you get that kind of mix of things. It's kind of the thing where, like, it's the crowd of people that would wear pompadours, but nobody has a pompadour.
And it would also, oh my god, I have to tell this anecdote. Dude, it was so funny. When Super Smash Bros. Brawl came out for the Nintendo Wii, I went to a midnight launch for the game, and this is, I guess, the only time I ever remember anyone dressed up like someone from the Matrix. This is, of course, many years after the Matrix came out, or maybe 6 years, let's say, 5 or 6, maybe 7 years. I guess it came out in 2006. This guy, we were waiting in line, a couple of my friends and I, and and they separated by pre-order, and then this guy dressed as Neo came by and led us into the GameStop and like led us to freedom to get the game. It was fucking amazing. I love that guy. Forever, I will always love that guy. He got me the game, but I think we were worried we might not get the game because there was a pre-order line and a not pre-order line. But anyways, but
Neo led you on the path.
He led me down the path to salvation. So
I think
there's a lot of
the
themes.
Visual, but I think also in terms of like the visuals of the Matrix, I think one of the reasons that people gravitate towards this movie so much, especially the original one, is that it feels like a really built-out world. Like, in the first 6 minutes, you get some level of establishing the rules, not unlike in Inception, you just get dropped in, right? They kind of spell out a few of the rules just at the start with that dream sequence, and then later when Ariadne is getting trained, you're getting trained at the same time, and it follows that kind of same story arc here in the Matrix, where there's that first moment where Trinity's running away from the agents, and you learn what the agents are, that they're this omnipresent danger, that there's this group of people that are trying to get away from the agents, and that you can use the hard line to get out.
Yeah, that's what's established.
Yeah, and it establishes some rules, and then it also establishes the aesthetic of the film, and this kind of like greenish color grade with a lot of grime.
And of course the green comes from it's not really relevant nowadays, but I guess that's probably the only thing that, in my opinion, is a little dated. It's because, of course, greens back in the day had a green hue because of the, I believe, it wasn't LEDs, obviously, but I can't think of exactly what. I guess it's a tube. It's a cathode ray tube, so it has to be the phosphor that is lit up. Usually a lot of screens had that green hue for computers, so that's where every scene, if you look back on the movie, I mean, this has been documented many times, but you don't have to listen to us about it, but every scene in the Matrix is tinted green to signify that they're in a computer system, right? Of course,
additionally, it has the added benefit of them having to have the green screen and not having to shade from how close the green is to them.
Of course,
so they can make a few more mistakes in terms of like the lighting and everything, and the cool shots of jumping up and the 360 camera and whatever.
Yeah, I guess, and I think every scene that's not in the Matrix is tinted blue, if I'm not mistaken. A slight hue. Maybe that's. Maybe something
I definitely think that there's
just to differentiate
the lights that they use on board the Nebuchadnezzar are super cold white.
Okay.
Which will give it a bit more blue. It'll give that.
So, I know we were gonna talk about the Matrix 4, which is coming out TBA, but do you think that Matrix 4 will have everything tinted blue? Because there's a lot of blue light coming out from our screens right now, or do you think they'll just continue? That's a question for later. We won't actually.
I think the color grade scheme is part of what makes this
super cool.
Yeah, Matrix. I think that they're gonna try and stick as close to the established
source material
atmosphere that
source
they have.
material. Yeah. I agree.
So we have the atmosphere. We have kind of three separate worlds. We have the Matrix world, the Nebuchadnezzar, and then we have like it's not the Matrix fully, but they're loading programs and different things. Because those loading programs don't really have that green tint either.
Yeah, they don't. They're just
at some points when they're in the Matrix, Keanu's lips look orange with the amount of green that I had on the Netflix version.
Okay.
That might be just the fidelity of the stream, but it was pretty intense.
That's hilarious. Well, anyways, I mean, moving on from the first 6 minutes of the movie, we sort of move into Keanu Reeves' character, who I think is actually a really great character. I know he's sort of corny. It's corny that they call him the One, and that terminology obviously transcended the Matrix after and was used many times. I feel like just colloquially has been used many times.
There's literally a Jet Li movie called The One.
Yeah, exactly. After the Matrix. No, but
where Down with the Sickness is a big song in that movie.
Yeah, so
yeah, I think
he's a really
Neo
great character.
Is a very cool, very great character. I think
they don't spend much time on his backstory, but they didn't need to. I don't think.
Keanu Reeves wasn't the first person that they pitched to.
Yeah.
It was Will Smith, so it could have been a team of Keanu Reeves and Lawrence Fishburne, or Will Smith and Val Kilmer, and Val Kilmer as Morpheus.
Oh, that would be that movie. I don't want to say the actors make the movie, because obviously there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that make a movie really great, but I think they made the right choice with these actors.
Yeah, I don't think that I love Val Kilmer, don't get me wrong.
I know, I
don't
do
think
too.
Val Kilmer has the same gravitas as Lawrence Fishburne. Plus, I think he wasn't as, like, physically... He doesn't have the same physical prowess as Lawrence Fishburne does.
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne is a big man. I can attest, I saw him in person.
Well, now he's put on a few pounds, but then he looked kind of
has.
like a bodybuilder, like a little bit
He's got that build.
Old school bodybuilder, you know?
Yeah.
They're not super like ripped or whatever, but
you can see
he had
the
that
chest.
barrel chest.
It's the chest. It's all that chest muscle.
Yeah.
He can lift a lot of stuff.
And he flies through. I never understood why he like had to prep himself to go through the wall, but whatever.
Let's see you crash through a wall with this much room.
There is no wall, Julien.
Exactly. Oh my god. So basically, Keanu Reeves' character, the One, he goes by the alias Neo. He's a hacker,
which is an anagram of one.
Yes, of course it is. Whoa, reading too deep into the weeds here. But of course, during the day, he has a normal life. He goes to a cubicle. He types on. He stares into a blank screen. When he goes back to his cubicle, he's just staring at a blank screen. I don't know if that was purposeful or if that was meant to signify that he was really stressed out or something from getting yelled at by his boss.
I just figured that was like that because he had stayed out till 6 a.m. at the club that was playing Rob Zombie.
Yeah, hilarious. Right, so basically Neo is the hacker, has been sort of questioning his reality. He's come across Morpheus in many articles, and he's really digging in and trying to find out who Morpheus is, because he thinks that there's something more to life as he knows it.
He knows that there's the concept of the Matrix.
Yes.
And he thinks that Morpheus is the person who can unlock the secrets of what the Matrix is. And so much so that in the previous scene to the scene that we're talking about where he's at the blank screen, Trinity is walking him through like, I can show you the way.
Yes, exactly. Wait, on the phone?
No, when they're at the club.
Oh, at the club.
She's
okay,
like, you've asked the question.
Exactly.
Say what's the question. What is the Matrix? You've been looking for him because he's the one who can unlock it for you. Yes, who is that? Morpheus. Yes.
Yes.
But this leads. Keanu Reeves is great.
He is great. He's just. Can you really get mad at such a great actor? I don't think so.
He's physical and charismatic in a really understated way that I don't know a lot of people that would be able to pull that charisma off, where he doesn't talk a lot. There's nothing very much that's like you draw into him. In fact, watching the movie, distinctly remember watching the movie the first time. I was like, this guy's kind of a bitch. Like, he's supposed to be the one, but he's like, I don't want to be the one. I know what you're doing. But in the end, he becomes like this badass motherfucker, you know?
Yeah, and it's really, I guess it's a story of, he follows the hero's tale in a way, as Luke Skywalker did, and many other people do throughout movie history and book history. But because, he overcomes some hardship and becomes the one, right? And saves everyone. But really, I think we sort of move on, and Neo, or Mr. Anderson, sort of comes into contact with the agents, and he sort of starts worrying about what's going on, right?
In one of the most disturbing scenes of all time.
Yeah. So, of course, the agents take him into this room because they capture him because he didn't want to follow Morpheus's orders, or directions and take the scaffolding up the building. I thought that was a really cool scene, and I think that that scene was actually filmed on that building, on that on the side of that skyscraper. I think that was a real scene. I don't think that was a prop or anything. I guess the phone might have actually been thrown down. I'm not sure. That Nokia phone though definitely still works. It definitely still works, being dropped 40 stories from the sky. But I think that it was really cool. Morpheus is like, look, there are 2 ways out of this building. I leave it up to you. And I think that really shows that Morpheus is trying to push Neo in a way and sort of test him. But it also
shows one of the main themes of the thing, where what makes humans is their ability to choose.
Yes.
Right? They're not
exactly
the difference between the agents who have programming and are limited in their scope of ways of thinking and different things, versus humans who can think more creatively, bend the laws of the Matrix, which have been set up because they can think outside of the box, or have the ability to create choices which aren't just logical processes that the programs have to do. Like in the end scene when they're going to go rescue Morpheus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or one of the climaxes of the movie, they're debating about whether it'll work, and Tank says something like, nobody's ever tried anything like this before, and Neo goes, that's why it's going to work, because he has the ability to think further and make different choices and really push the boundaries of where they are. And I think that's a great theme that shows like the contradiction between him being afraid to go up that scaffolding versus when he gets to the decision to go storm the building where Morpheus is being held. It shows that character growth.
That's definitely true. Exactly. And then so obviously Neo ends up getting taken out of the building by the agents, and we go into this sort of holding room where...
Here's my question right before that.
Oh, sorry.
Because I don't understand the function of the agents. Like, how do they work? So the agents are able to tap into the thought processes of, or like read the processes of everybody around them. As shown at the end of the movie, when there's the guy who's in the subway, the homeless drunk, and he sees Morpheus disappear, and he's like, "What?" and then Smith is like, "Huh? I know where they are." Now the question is, Trinity is on a motorcycle right in front of the car where the agents are corralling Neo into.
Yeah.
But she's disconnected from the Matrix. So shouldn't they be able to read that person is different from everybody else? I don't understand how it functionally works.
They don't care. It's like the end of The Dark Knight where Lucius Fox turns every cell phone in Gotham City into a microphone. It's exactly like that.
I was thinking of it like the Hitman, like Hitman vision. Or like the Eagle vision where you can see all the people and then like their enemies are marked in red. Like, wouldn't it through the Eagle vision, wouldn't Trinity look different because she's not?
Yeah,
she's a red pill?
Also the agents got what they wanted. They got Neo.
But they could have gotten both of them.
But then, I mean, obviously they could.
I just don't understand.
Loopholes.
Like,
if
Agent Smith can be like, "Oh, homeless guy saw something. I go to homeless guy now." Blah. How come people can't be like, "Oh, that person not connected to network"?
Because they aren't scanning. I guess it's because they aren't scanning the network constantly, unless they're. I don't know how they scan the network. Do they have to focus a lot of energy to do it? I would assume that's probably true.
It's like every time they scan somebody, one of the human batteries dies. It's like, guys,
probably.
You can do this, but it'll cost.
It'll cost you. Exactly. So Neo's taken to a holding room. I mean, I look, we can nitpick the story all we want, right? It's still a great story. Okay?
I just don't understand how the agents function. It's like,
neither do I. And then
he can tell when the homeless man has seen something, but he can't tell
that Trinity is right
there.
What's really gonna what does the Oracle say? What's really gonna bake your noodle is, I think that's what she says. Is how the hell does Agent Smith work once he's freed from the Matrix?
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we get to that. Those movies are their own complicated
problems.
This movie is the basic, like, it is the eventuality of Rene Descartes and Blade Runner, and kind of the eventuality of where AI was headed.
Yeah.
And those movies are, man. Do we have more story?
Exactly. So in the holding room, Neo is bugged by the agents, and then he thinks
not
it's
only
a dream.
bugged, his mouth becomes this.
Yeah, so I couldn't really
taped over.
I don't understand that.
Have hated that scene since I was a kid. It makes my stomach churn every single time. I get like cringy goosebumps. It's
and by horrifying. The way, speaking of, I mean, obviously, I don't know if obviously, but that must have been some sort of computer generated. What does the I stand for? CGI image. Let's go with that. The CGI in this movie and all the sort of special effects, I think, really do hold up even nowadays. I think
there are a few things that don't.
Honestly,
that mouth thing really holds up.
Yeah.
All of the shots where it's looking down,
so small.
Where it's Morpheus and Neo hanging from the helicopter, and you see Lawrence Fishburne and Keanu Reeves' face. Those shots don't hold up. And then the door of the elevator really doesn't hold up. When it explodes.
Yeah. That the way they filmed that, by the way, I know this because I watched the what's it called? The special features. Is they obviously I don't know if it's obvious, but it was a miniature of that hallway, and they took like a flamethrower and just ran it through, and they filmed that in slow motion. So I thought
the fire looked good. It was just the
that's
door.
Because it was real fire.
The door just didn't match.
And also, you if you take a closer look, I don't think they damaged the miniature when it's gone. I think it's just a reset of that hallway. It's all right. Oops, who gives a fuck?
The really, bullet time looks cool still.
Yeah, it does, and I think and all the combat is super well choreographed, so it's really and well filmed. I think this is one of the first movies in Western Hollywood movies anyways. I think the Chinese had it down, obviously, and of course the Wachowski brothers at the time, they studied a lot of kung fu movies in order to film this, and I think a lot of cinema coming out of Hong Kong as well, particularly like Bruce Lee movies and things like that. So a lot of the shots and the movies are influenced in a way, and the same with John Wick as well, are influenced from kung fu movies from like the 70s and 80s, and so they took their time to understand where American, or not necessarily American, but I guess like Western action is different from Asian style action movies, and they really wanted to bring that influence into their Western style movie, and so they really took the time to get wide shots, still shots of the kung fu action scenes, so there wasn't so much of a shaky cam, because they really wanted to emphasize the action in the movie, how cool it was.
And it doesn't cut so much.
Yeah, and there aren't that many cuts, exactly.
If you go, like, there's a scene, I had just watched John Wick Parabellum, and then I saw, like, one of the last episodes of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And there was a sword fight, which was like 30 seconds, and had as many cuts as that Iron Fist fight had in it, you know? It was like 30 cuts back and forth, and it ruins the entire flow of the fight.
Yeah.
Because it shows, like, we got this, then we got this, then we got this. But in this one, you lose yourself in the action, which I think is the thing. It makes the action of the combat feel part of the thing that draws you into the world, which is, I think, a key to a really great action movie.
And they're telling the I guess, like you said earlier, I mean, the whole point is that the humans, once they free their minds, are able to bend the rules of the Matrix. That's something that Morpheus tells Neo pretty early on in the movie, and that's why there's so much action in this movie. I think it's sort of a plot device in order to tell the story that these characters are a little, they've freed their minds to a certain extent. Of course, Neo ends up being the one, and he can just see the Matrix, but that's a whole different part of the story. But like I was saying, I guess Neo gets bugged, and then we don't have to go through the whole plot, but I wanted to get to the point where basically Neo meets Morpheus at this point. He's bugged, and then we're sort of revealed a lot more about how the Matrix operates and what it is, and why it's important that Morpheus finds Neo. And that's, of course, the whole story of the movie, right? Or it's one huge part of the movie. So at this point, Neo is given the choice, the red pill or the blue pill. And he can either leave the Matrix or he can stay in the Matrix. And I think that's a really great plot device, those pills. But also it gives rise to the philosophical question. I think the real philosophical question of the movie is, like, should you be questioning your reality, or is ignorance bliss, Yvonne? Right? The antagonist of the movie is Cypher, to a certain extent, and he is a character that has been living on the Nebuchadnezzar, doing what Morpheus tells him to do for a long time, living in a really horrible world, because it's the apocalypse has already happened, and they're trying to scrap together enough energy to search for Neo or whatever. But Cypher chooses to go. If he was given the second choice, he would choose to go back to the Matrix and live his life without knowing anything about the real world. So I think that choice is not without merit. I think that there's some merit to that choice. I don't think it's the complete wrong choice by any means. I don't think I would choose that. I wanted to pose the question to you. What would you choose, the blue pill or the red pill?
Well, here, let me rephrase this for you. Cypher lived for 9 years outside of the Matrix, eating that protein
goop.
and amino goop. Would you, who is a chef, not want to go back to the Matrix where you could cook, I don't know, a leg of lamb or something after 9 years?
I'm cooking lamb right now.
Instead of eating that goop. I just want you to really think about that. There's no wine. There's tank degreaser or like engine degreaser.
It still gets you drunk, all right? If it gets you drunk, does it matter, Yvonne? Does it matter? No.
I think that's a question that I could personally only answer if I was put in that position of actually being there. Too. But I think it's reflective of one of those questions of, like, humans have choice and they have to decide what to do with that choice, and sometimes they have to deal with the consequences and struggle through that choice. And I think the thing that makes the difference between Morpheus and Cypher is, like, Morpheus has a true belief. He is a true believer. He has, from the Oracle, obtained the knowledge of the righteous, right? He knows that he will find the liberation of the humanity. Whereas Cypher, we have no idea what he got from the Oracle.
Right.
He's this very kind of... So maybe the Oracle told him he's going to be Judas to Morpheus. We have no idea, but he clearly doesn't have as big of a belief system or something an ideal that he can aspire to. And I think that becomes problematic, right? So Morpheus is like, he's told he's going to discover the one. Trinity says that she's going to fall in love with the one. Neo is told that he's not the one but could be the one. Mm-hmm. And Cypher is, we don't know what he's told. He's just kind of this character who is tired of living in this ever difficult struggle. And when he's told, finally we found this next choice who could be the one, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. And he's showing, 50-50 at best.
Right.
So I think Cypher is a little bit more sympathetic of a character than if you really look outside of the movie than if you are in the movie. When watching the movie the first time, fucking hated Joe Pantaleone. I fucking hated that dude. From his stupid mustache to the betrayal.
He's gonna pop. I love that guy. He's so funny, dude.
So it's a difficult question to like, but one that, like, as a Russian person, a lot of the like philosophical underpinnings of the Russian society, whether it's religion or communism, a lot of it is like struggle, work, labor. All of those things will reveal righteousness and truth and be part of the ideal path. Whether you're Russian Orthodox, where struggle is an incredibly like staunch pillar to bring you to be part of heaven, or where in the communist society, although atheists, your labor is what you contribute to society. That's what you judge yourself by. That's kind of like a pillar of society is struggling and working and putting that in. So for me, the underpinning is like, I will keep working with somebody if I agree with the ideology. I think that's within the range of a lot of them. Like Tank and Dozer, they're born in Zion. They clearly have this need to continue the liberation. The other characters we don't really get into that much.
APOC. What's the Switch?
Switch. Mouse.
They're sort of like the characters from Final Fantasy VII, Wedge, Biggs, and Jesse. If they were to remake the Matrix, they would give these characters huge backstories, an entire chapter of the game about why you got to get Jesse's pizza. It's horrible. No, I mean, to be a certain extent, they are actually given about the amount of time that Final Fantasy VII creators gave those characters. But you're right; these characters are sort of they are there in order to advance the story for sure, but they're not given any sort of backstory or really many lines.
Their entire purpose in the script is to die.
Yeah, to advance the story.
To show the stakes of the Matrix, whether it's Mouse and the power of the agents, or APOC and Switch, and like what the disconnecting you from the Matrix can do to you.
Yeah,
I think
while you're still in
that being part of it. Switch did have a much bigger backstory than that character was given Shrift, because the character was named Switch because they were supposed to switch gender when going inside of the Matrix. But the studio cut that and ended up with Belinda McClory, who's Australian but sounded Eastern European when she said, "Not like this." So Switch was always my favorite character because she was Eastern European. But only in that moment. I'm boggled as to what that line reading is. I really don't understand it.
That's so funny. Yeah, and I don't even know what to say. That's so funny. Okay, yeah, those characters have always sort of been left behind, right? They're like
and everyone gets annoyed by Mouse. Like his point.
I like him.
I got annoyed. I don't like Mouse.
You don't like it? I think it's funny.
No. Let me tell you about chicken and pussy.
There had to be some comic relief in the movie. Come on.
And then Dozer comes in with his third line of the movie, his first of 3 lines. What you got in there is proteins and all the essential amino acids.
It's got everything the body needs. Yeah, that was I mean, I guess the whole point of that scene was to, just show how they eat. I don't know. They had to show that they do things on the ship other than whatever it is that they're doing.
I think it's
pirating broadcasting their pirate signal. What does that mean? And this is where we hack into the Matrix.
This wireless network
that we have.
You know what? I don't understand why the machines don't just like password protect the network or whatever. I don't. Maybe not.
It's all right. It's all right.
So I think that the scenes on the Nebuchadnezzar are both to show like the struggle to preserve humanity outside of the Matrix, and to make sure that what they're fighting for, the freedom that they're fighting for, is actually worth the freedom that they're obtaining. It's right. Like if you fight for freedom, but that freedom that you have out of the Matrix is living in a desert glassed planet where you struggle to live and don't have any fun and can't even get drunk, What's the point, really?
I know, exactly. That's why Cypher's a character. Yeah, but exactly. That is the question that drives us.
And Cypher proves the point of what that tension can bring to. I think that...
But, yeah.
Yeah,
okay, sorry.
I think the characters that are on the Nebuchadnezzar are pretty cool.
Yeah,
like they all have their own style,
team
whatever.
Ragtag team of rebels. There, they got on the Nebuchadnezzar, and I think all of the as we move on into the series, we see different crews on different ships and different size ships and that type of stuff. So I think that's a cool fleshing out of that sort of part of the story in the real world. I think the theme of questioning your reality is really great. I think maybe it's not so obvious. There's no way to prove, right, that we're not in the Matrix right now. That's
I think therefore I am.
Who? Yeah, exactly. What's the philosopher that
René
came
Descartes.
up with Descartes, right? The brain in the vat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's obviously over.
And the idea of the brain in the vat is the only thing that you can prove is the fact that you exist because you are the one who are generating the thoughts in your head. But a demon could take your brain, put it in a vat, and then all of the sensory things that you're experiencing could just be like impulses that are broadcast onto your brain. And you can never be sure of anything that your senses create other than the fact that you are able to think yourself.
Right, and Morpheus poses that question to Neo, what is real? What do you define as real?
Do you think that's air you're breathing?
You're breathing again. So that's the real philosophical question of the movie, but I think it sort of extends further on. It helped, or it got a generation of young people to question how things work and why things work and why things are the way they are. I think it's not just questioning your reality, but questioning maybe your government, questioning that type of thing. So I think that's why this movie had a really great, or maybe not great, but a really large impact on society beyond just posing a philosophical question.
I think it's the spiritual successor of Blade Runner in that way.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I think Blade Runner dealing with AI and humanity and all that jazz, and then the Matrix comes along and deals with a lot of those questions, because the foundation of the world is that we created AI and they took over, and then we have to debate all these questions.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything in particular you wanted to talk about right now about the Matrix? We're about an hour.
I think this is going to be an hour and a half podcast.
I'm not saying we need to stop now. I'm just asking, where do you want to talk?
I think,
what do you want to talk about now?
I think we've talked about the philosophical underpinnings. The book where Neo hides away the disc for Choi.
Yeah.
This simulation, the simulacrum, or whatever that I think the title of that book is. That was required reading for all the actors.
Oh,
so,
really? That's cool.
Yeah. So the Wachowski siblings, really, they stressed that philosophical component as being important to the actors. So the atmosphere that was being generated isn't just the physical production that we see, the high production value of the different sets that we see and all that, but it is also the philosophical underpinnings that they're really trying to get to or question, etc. So I think that the reason this movie works so well and has such a longevity to it is it really has a lot of depth, many levels that you can look at, whether from cinematographically, just like looking at these action scenes, to analyzing the philosophy of the Matrix.
Yeah.
I really want to get into some of our favorite scenes, some of our favorite quotables, things like that. So, what I think we can come up with a list of at least 5 of our favorite scenes,
Sure.
or most rewatchable scenes, maybe. I would say, to throw out a few, Neo is fighting Morpheus.
It's a great song.
That whole sequence.
It's amazing.
I'm going to come out with a list and then we can talk about them. So, Neo fighting Morpheus. I think the shootout in the lobby and the subway fight scene are probably my 3 most rewatchable moments. Although, I would say a scene that doesn't have action in it that is super rewatchable, although that just might be super quotable, the spoon bending scene.
Yeah.
Going into the Oracle, but either way.
How can you forget about the most rewatchable scene where Neo dodges bullets? I mean, it's not that long of a sequence, but that's what a lot of people when they talk about doing the Matrix. I don't know who came up with that fucking. I was so pissed off the first time someone said that to me. I was like, "What the fuck are you saying? Doing the Matrix?" And then he did this. I was like, "Shut up, you fucking asshole!" It's in 5th grade. I remember that.
It's because everything in the English language has to simplify, and everything needs to become a verb. Like, go Google that rather than go look it up.
Anyways, I think that's a very iconic scene. If not, you have to rewatch it, right? And then Trinity says, "Dodge this," right?
Yes, the transition into "dodge this." I mean, everybody quotes that line too.
But yeah, of course,
it's infinitely quotable movie.
It's a very well written movie. There's a reason. I mean, there's a reason why it is quotable. It's because it's really well written, I think. I mean, some of the lines are super corny, but it's still like there's still lines that you have fun saying outside of watching the movie. I think it's the fact that the lines are used not just when you're watching the movie, that has to mean something. But
yeah, it means it has a strong legacy.
And I think the scene, a scene that's not an action scene that's rewatchable a lot is when the woman in the red dress scene. I think that's a great scene as well.
The tutorial on what the Matrix is.
Yep. I think that's a really cool scene that I liked rewatching when I watched the movie. And let's see. So that puts us at 5 scenes, doesn't it?
Somewhere, yeah. Do you have a favorite of those?
I think my favorite is when Morpheus fights Neo. I think that's a really great. It's the first time in the movie where we sort of get this sort of fun, playful kung fu action. Mm-hmm. In that it's a simulation, obviously, the Matrix, but it's not, the stakes aren't high because it's a training program. So we've already set the ground there, and then throw in another layer, we have this really great soundtrack in the background. I think it sort of adds, it's a fast-paced song, and it's sort of like an upbeat song that that sort of, it sets the tone for how the music can go in this movie. There's a lot of, I think the soundtrack to this movie is really cool. It's definitely holds up. It doesn't sound out of date. I think it works really well with the movie as well. I don't
that
think
Rob
any
Zombie
of the songs,
song.
Yeah,
Dracula.
it's a good song.
I love that song.
It's a good song. But
finishing
I think
on the Rage Against the Machine.
That's such. I loved it. Wake up! I think Rage Against the Machine was really popular in the 90s, obviously, but they became even more popular after this movie, I'm sure. And it's a really poignant song to end the movie on, of course, called Wake Up. But I think that the original score of the movie as well is really cool. It sort of almost has a little bit of a Philip Glass influence, but also has a lot of, they sort of draw from sounds that you might think a machine would make, and a computer would make, these types of sort of artificial sounds that you wouldn't get from a normal instrument, even though I think they probably were made with some instruments in a way. I think
he probably recorded the score with an orchestra.
Right.
Sure. I think some of the things that the composer Don Davis stated about, like, his thoughts behind building the score of, there's lots of mirrors in the movie, so he was looking at reflecting parts of the orchestra back and forth.
That's something I did want to talk about. I did like I love the mirror imagery in the movie. It's sort of like a way to reflect a reflection, right? The whole idea of when Neo and Morpheus go into that the white void that they're in, where Morpheus tells Neo about the Matrix, and he talks about the mental projection. It's a digital projection of your mental. I don't know exactly what he says. It's your digital projection inside the Matrix. That's why he changes. Is it's so hard to believe. So I think that's a whole theme in the movie, right? Everyone gets different clothing when they're fucking really stay inside, man. It's fucking again still hunking. Yeah, so you project yourself in the Matrix as, I guess, you think you're gonna look. I don't know. I don't know how they choose to look, but at least your hairdo is that way, or not that way in Morpheus's case. But so I think there's a lot of imagery. Obviously, when Neo's taking the red or blue pill, you see it through Morpheus's. You see the reflection in Morpheus's sunglasses.
That's such.
There's
cool
that
scene.
whole mirror.
It's so well shot.
That's a really great scene.
that might be one of the top rewatchable scenes of all time.
That's also rewatchable. There's right. So,
is there a scene in this movie that you don't? If you were scrolling through it on TBS, and he goes, I'm gonna give you the finger, and you're gonna give me my phone call. Like, is there a scene in this movie where you're not like, okay, I'll
crap.
I'm in. I'm watching the rest of this movie.
Right, and there's a whole lot of mirror imagery in the movie. Obviously, the way Neo gets out of the Matrix for the first time, he touches that mirror, and they talk about dreams and reality and all that stuff. So I totally can see sort of the mirror type sound quality that you might end up getting from this soundtrack. Their original score, anyways. I think it's really great. I think it works well with the movie.
I do too.
Might be a perfect movie.
I think it's up there.
It's certainly up there.
Being closest to a perfect movie.
I think it's paced pretty well too. I wasn't seeing the movie for probably the 10th or 15th time last night. I wasn't bored at all. Still,
it definitely picks up.
It's a real
The first part of the movie, when they're going through and kind of like
getting Neo out
after that 6-minute mark where Trinity's like, "Get up, Trinity, get up." After that scene, to when Neo gets introduced and picked up by the crew, like that portion there's some places there that drag. I will say.
Yeah. maybe
but that's only
maybe
by
1 or 2 minutes.
Super modern standards. I think it's still really well paced.
Yeah, I think it's a really well-paced movie, and of course the action I think still holds up. I think it's a really great action flick to watch, and it's a lot deeper than a hell of a lot of movies out there. So,
yeah,
fantastic movie.
I think
fantastic movie.
I really love the camera angles and the way that they invented that. Like you've seen the
bullet time.
Yeah, you've seen the how they created that setup.
The rigs, yeah.
For there's just like a green screen and then built in like these green boxes basically that have holes, where like a shit ton of cameras are just tracking the whole shot, so you get the 360. And
it's I don't know the engineer who worked on all of that. I mean, obviously it wasn't just one person, but the people who designed all of that technology deserved a lot more recognition than they get. I don't know, because I don't know who they are. So I think that they've clearly revolutionized since then, but I think this movie not only, was it an amazing movie, but I think it probably did. I don't know exactly how, but it must have pushed the film industry forward technologically as well, which is pretty cool, because it's about a movie about technology.
Yeah,
in a way. So, or exactly.
I'm really wondering, like, because I know the Wachowskis were really involved in the creation of the look and feel of the movie and directed it. So I wanted to know how involved they were with the creation of the like cyclorama, whatever, shooting. And I imagine that they were fully involved in it. But
yeah, I'm sure they had. Oh, I don't know exactly their backgrounds. So maybe they actually designed it. I don't know. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of really cool. It's so cool that watching the making of this movie is almost as entertaining, if not more entertaining, than watching the movie, because I've spent a lot of time. There's a lot of clips on YouTube as well, by the way, of the making of this movie and all the training the actors had to go through.
I watched
Trinity,
a ton of those
Carrie,
off the original DVD.
Right, yeah, I had. It's so cool that they filmed it all. By the way, they had the foresight to film this, so, and that people would be interested in how this movie was made, unless they were just documenting it for themselves because they spent so much time making it. Right, that I think that I mean, obviously you work on movies now, Yvonne, so clearly making movies is a really interesting part of your life, or it's something that you're really interested in. So I don't know if you guys film any of this type of stuff in the background. Right, there's cameras everywhere, but are you? I mean, you're
like
not
BTS
using them, but...
kind of stuff. I don't think that there's a lot of that going on in the films that we're making. But I'm also not a person who's on set that often, so okay. I basically work in the office. Okay. So I have no way of guaranteeing what I'm saying.
All right. Well, I always love to see. I love seeing outtakes. I love seeing that type of stuff. I love seeing how the behind the scenes stuff and
I would imagine that it was super critical on this movie as well, or interesting on this movie, because they were doing a lot of really progressive, really forward thinking, and like pushing the boundaries on creating the Western kung fu movie, right? So the wire fu and the way that they're designing bullet time, and from the first, like that first jump that Trinity does, it was revolutionary, to be able to 360 around her and see her go up in the air and do that kick.
Right.
So I just like, it's even, what is it, 20 years later that we're now watching 21. This movie. It's
an old movie.
Yeah. It's still a really cool thing, but it doesn't hold as much gravity with us, I don't think, because it's not the most interesting thing that we've seen. Like there's been innovation, etc. But I think that it's important to contextualize that was super unique for for much of the audience that was watching this movie.
Right. Yeah. No one had ever seen anything like that before. Much in the way that Star Wars did in the late 70s and early 80s. You know, that was a huge thing back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all those space fights. That's why people love.
That's also partially why I love the fight between Neo and Agent Smith in the subway, where they're doing the bullets in that circle, and then
that's
really you're out. So are you. So I love that scene.
I think. I mean, I don't know if you want to end the podcast, but a question: do you think we'll ever see a movie that innovates in a way that can actually captivate that sort of feeling in an audience again, now that we have come into an era of just CGI in all action films like the Marvel movies? Do you think we're ever going to see...
Inception did that. I think
Inception did.
I think Inception created a world, defined the world, brought people in, and the I think what's important to understand is the magic of a movie is, were you drawn into that movie and into the world of the movie while you were sitting in the seat watching that movie? If so, the magic of the movie worked. Whatever happens afterwards, like, that's a totally different story, because you can analyze to shit anything that you read or watch, etc. And whether it holds up to that level of analysis is a different kind. It's a fundamentally different interpretation. But when you're in the seat watching that movie, does that movie transport you? The Matrix did that. I think Inception did that for many people, especially for me. And I think there are different things, like on a much smaller scale. I think Arrival did that for me more recently. Live, Die, Repeat, I think, is actually like a stealth one that did that. Like, you're just watching Tom Cruise go through in his little mech suit and go through the same day, like Groundhog Day meets Gundam kind of thing.
Okay.
I don't know. Do you? I don't think that there's anything that was so like world or genre defining. I really think that Inception might be, because people still talk about that. But I don't know that there's anything that's as defining as The Matrix.
I think, I don't think so. Maybe Matrix 4 will. No. It's going to be such a bad movie.
But The Matrix also tarnished its legacy with 2 and 3, which we'll get into.
Yeah. God damn it. You can't follow up that movie. All right. I mean, look, we've talked it to death, but are there any final thoughts you have on the movie? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I think that this is a movie that is well deserving of a yearly rewatch. It's
I think you could watch it.
Super interesting. It flows really well. I really enjoyed.
The themes are still relevant too, I think.
I think they're even more relevant now.
Yeah, it's not a product of its time.
Because we have Elon Musk spouting off where there's the likelihood that we're in a computer simulation is infinitely more than if we're not, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that another thing that makes this movie more interesting is exactly that point, that the questions that it raises are more interesting to us the further our technology develops, rather than less.
Yeah. Super cool movie. Go ahead and tell us what you think in the comment section below. Of course, we're going to be reviewing the Animatrix next, I think, because, well, that is sort of an amalgamation of, part of it takes place in between Matrix 1 and 2, part of it takes place before the Matrix. It's sort of a whole what's the word? Anthologue?
Anthology?
What am I trying? Anthology, that's the word.
I think we can go to Matrix. I think we
stories.
should do the live action films, and then our fourth pod can be Animatrix and additional supplements, and then venturing on to what Matrix 4 is going to be.
Yeah, I really liked Animatrix. They made a similar thing, a similar sort of short story. The Animatrix is really cool, I think. They had a whole bunch of different animators tell a short story in the Matrix universe, essentially. They did a similar thing with Batman. So they had a bunch of different animators tell a short story about Batman in an anthology. And that was a really cool. I highly suggest you watch that, Yvonne. I need to figure out. I have it. I need to
tell me what that is. Also, have you seen Batman Year One, by the way?
No.
It's
I know
super
what
good.
It is. That sounds cool. Anyways, we're going to be moving on to Matrix Reloaded next, then Matrix Revolutions, then Animatrix. So stay tuned for next week's podcast where we talk about those. Have a great week. Goodbye.